Luke 12, verse 22 to 34. It says about not worrying. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more value are you than the birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor nor spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow it's thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and all these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell all your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves, and you will not wear out. A treasure in heaven that will never fade, where no thief comes near, nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also."
Good morning, everyone. Morning, nice to see you. I think most of you know me. I'm Paul. I'm a member of the church here. And as Alan said, this morning we're continuing the service we're doing on being like Jesus. This is number 8 in the series, all from Luke's Gospel, talking about trust. Now, that passage we just heard, hands up if you've got to be honest here. When you hear that, do you start to feel a little bit nervous when you hear that passage? Yeah? Okay, it's not just me. So there's a lot in there, isn't there? So Jesus is saying, don't worry about food, don't worry about, what you're going to eat, don't worry about where you're going to live. Do not worry, very easy to say, very hard to do. Sell all your possessions and give to the poor. It all seems pretty hard and pretty tricky when we hear that passage. But I'd suggest there's one verse in there that gives us the real key, the way into that. And if we could have the first slide. So the verse that I think is really relevant to really home in on is this one. Verse 31, "Seek his kingdom, and all these things will be given to you as well." If we focus on that, if we focus on seeking God's kingdom, that will unlock the rest. And confession here, this is one of my absolute favorite verses in the Bible, so it's a great joy to be looking at this one this morning. So what is Jesus saying in this passage? Basically, he's beginning by saying, just life is so complicated, right? There's so many things to think about. Like, what are we going to do for work? How are we going to find the money to pay the bills? How are we going to work? What career are we going to take? Where are we going to live? How are we going to afford where we can live? What about relationships, marriage, children, friendships? What do we do in all of that? How do we invest our time? The church, being involved with the church, putting time into that. Keeping ourselves healthy, exercising, eating well. Maybe we're studying, all that studying we've got to do as well. The hobbies and interests, paying the bills, raising the children, thinking about the future, pension. So many things to think about and worry about. So much to juggle in life. So many things that we ought to be doing. And it's really easy to go through life just focusing on those things. Like Jesus says in that passage, God knows you need them. He knows they're important. But it's very easy for us to go through life just worrying about those kinds of things and kind of sleepwalk through our life. But what is the point of us? What are we here doing if we're just running after all those things all the time? And in this verse, Jesus is saying, as Christians, as followers of him, actually our life is really simple. He's only asking us to do one thing. Seek his kingdom, and all the rest will fall into place around that. Or put another way, if you're a Christian, your job is to figure out what God wants you to do and go and do it. And the rest will all make sense and will all start to fall into place around that. Now, at this point, we need to illustrate this. We need an illustration. And for this illustration, I will need 2 volunteers. Now, this is the point where everybody scrupulously avoids eye contact with me with a look of absolute terror. But this is really easy. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to say anything. So it's the simplest thing in the world. So 2 brave volunteers. 1, fantastic. 1 more? Yeah, come on, Hannah. Fantastic. Right. If you guys can just stand here for now. Right. So, okay, Hannah, if you can come over here. So for the purposes of this illustration, your job is to be a rock, okay? You can do that? Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so to explain this, so a very long time ago, when I was at university, I studied theology, but I also did some other modules, and one of my modules was a subject of artificial intelligence. Now remember, this is 30 years ago, so artificial intelligence then is not what it is now. But you may remember, like, way back. Do you remember in the days when there used to be those computers that would play chess and beat grandmasters back in the 80s? People remember that? So when they started down artificial intelligence, they did that, and these computers got really good at chess. But they couldn't do anything else, right? They couldn't do all the other things that humans do and all the clever things we could do. They couldn't do any of that. And a lot of the scientists were drawing a blank when they tried to do that. So they realized, actually, we need to go back to real basics. Let's start really basic and start to get machines doing really basic things and then build up from there. So this really basic early thing, you had a little robot with wheels, and you had a rock that it was aiming for, and the robot went to the rock, right? So dead simple, dead simple. But then they thought, well, let's make it a little bit more complicated. So they had something else. So we need our second volunteer, and your job is to also be a rock. So if you can come and stand in the middle, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. So now our robot's got to get to rock 1, but he's got to get around rock 2. So you need to count with me how many commands this robot now needs, right? So keep it on your fingers, and I'm not going to count, so I'm going to come back to you. So number 1, it's got to start moving, right? So 1. Then it's got to stop, second command. Turn left, stop. Turn forward, stop. Turn right. How many are we on? 7, 8, something like that. Stop. Move forward, stop. Turn right, stop. Move forward again, stop. Turn left, stop. Move forward again to get to its destination. How many commands was that? Did we get? 16, 10? So something that was really simple got really complicated. And life is really complicated, all these things to work out. But then they figured out something else. So they got a light bulb on rock number 1. If you can hold the light bulb for me, thank you. And then our robot, they just put a little light sensor on the front of the robot and told it to head towards the light. And it went and did all of this automatically, right? So life was really complicated. All of these complex instructions it had to remember. But one simple instruction, head towards the light, cut through all of that, and all those things happened automatically. Thank you very much, rocks. You can now sit down. Oh. Head towards the lights, right? And this is a little bit what Jesus is saying in this passage, right? So life is complicated, so many complex instructions, so many things we've got to worry about, and they all matter and they're all important. But actually there's just one thing. If we just seek his kingdom, head towards his light, head towards what Jesus is telling us to do as Christians, we'll find a lot of that stuff just falls into place naturally and happens naturally without us having to worry about it and think about it quite so much. So this is what Jesus is saying, but it's very easy to say, how do we actually do that? So if a Christian is being about figuring out what God wants you to do and going and doing it, how do we figure that out? So if I could have the next slide. Just a little bit of thinking about the process of how we might do that. And this is relevant whatever stage we're at. So it may be we're sort of going into life and thinking, what am I going to do with my life? Or maybe we're at a different stage of life and we're thinking, what do I do? What's God calling me to in this season, in these few months, in the next year, in the next half a year, in the next few weeks? Whatever it might be, it's always relevant for us. But it's good to be intentional, right? Because, as I say, those other things in life can just take over, and that's what Jesus is saying. We can run after all those things and miss the main thing that we should be heading towards, his kingdom and his will for us and his purpose for us in our lives. So it's good to be intentional because time can slip by fast while we're running after the other things. Sure, many of you remember when we first came here 20 years ago and we had these little kids running around our ankles who are now these giants that you see sat with us in church, right? And it seems like a blink of an eye. Time goes fast, doesn't it? So we have to be intentional about what is it God's wanting us to do because time will zip by. So how do we do that? So first thing I'd suggest we do, if we can have this slide up, is go to a quiet place to pray and listen to what God's saying to us. So Jesus models this for us really well. If we read the Gospels, Jesus is always running away to go up a mountain, to be by himself with the Father, to listen to God, to get away from the crowd, to listen to God. So if Jesus needed to do that, we need to do it, right? So we need to find a quiet place, go away, where we can listen to God. And then secondly, just ask God what he wants us to do. Listen to God and ask what he's saying us to do and calling us to do in our lives at this time. And a quick footnote on this one, I would be careful not to sort of over-spiritualize this and become sort of super spiritual and super worried about it. Now, Lisa, as you know, my wife Lisa here in the second row has been an enormous source of common sense throughout our married life together. And 25 plus years ago, we were at a stage in our life when we were thinking there was lots of change going on, and we were thinking we wanted to move, and we were also looking for new jobs, and we also wanted to start a family. So we had these three big life things all swirling around us, and we were sort of praying about it and saying, well, if we move, but then we get a different job, then we'd have to move again. And if we start a family, is that the right time to be doing a new job? We got ourselves into a real muddle about this, so we were praying about it. I remember one day we were sat down and we were praying together and saying, God, what do you want us to do? And all this stuff. And we finished praying, and Lisa turned to me and said, I really feel that God is saying, I don't care. And what he's saying to you, it doesn't matter, live here, live there, do this job, do that job. What I want is for you to get on wherever you are and be my servant and serve me in that place and bring God's love, share his story, tell people about Jesus, bring love to the community. Wherever you are, that's what I'm calling you to do. And I think for a lot of us, for a lot of our lives, that is what Jesus is calling us to do, right? And we see this in a passage from the Old Testament, Micah 6:6-8, where the people of God are asking him what they should do. And they're saying, with what offering shall I come before you, Lord, and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be blessed with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? So they're seeking God. What shall I do? What shall I do? And God's reply is, I've already told you. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. So for a lot of us, for a lot of our lives, what God is calling us to do is just wherever we are, just get on and be a Christian, be salt and light, share his love with the community where he has put us. But there may be times when he is calling us to something specific. So we read in the Bible that Paul was a missionary to the Gentiles. He had a very clear sense of calling. That was what he was to do. And there may be different times in our lives where we feel, I'm really called to serve the church in this way at this time, or it's really right for me to go for this new job, or whatever it might be. So there are specific times as well. So set some time aside, go somewhere quiet, pray and listen to what God's saying. And third point, time limit our listening. So if we need to listen to what God's telling us to do, that can go on and on and on. I would suggest a really practical thing is say, look, I'm going to take a few days to think about this, or whatever it might be, a period of time, and then at the end of that, I'm going to make my decision as best I can and offer that to the Lord and let the Lord guide you in that. But yeah, we need to crack on with life as well. And then a few other points. I suggest then next one, checking it against the Bible. So whatever we feel God's telling us to do, is it in line with biblical teaching, what the Bible's telling us? If we think God's telling us to go and rob a bank, that's probably not right? That's probably not right. So check it's in line with the Bible. And next, get prayers and advice from other Christians. So we may want to check with other Christians the things we feel God's put on our hearts and listen to him. Listen to their wise advice as well. And then next slide. I would suggest writing up. So if it's a decision you're making, it's good to write it down. I would suggest we can be intentional about it. Again, it's being intentional. What is it God's calling us to do? Make a note of that. Be intentional about it. And then the one after that. So there's something about reviewing where we're currently putting our time. So sometimes if we listen to God and we feel he's telling us to do something, to prioritize something, to invest our time and energy into that area, and then we look at where we actually spend our time, normally day by day, week by week. They don't always align. So good to, once you know what God's calling you into, to really spend some time aside to review where you're currently putting your time. Do you need to adjust where you're putting that time? Then just a couple more. Perseverance. So whatever God's called us to, we know that life is tough and stuff will come along and knock us off track, and we'll doubt and we'll worry. and we'll get nervous, and all of life will take over. So there's a big part of the Christian faith that's about persevering and persevering through those times. And finally, the last point, good to just check back with God regularly and keep close to God. What is the God calling you to do? And listening and checking regularly with him. Just to share my routine, so I do a morning prayer routine each morning, and I have sort of different elements of that. I'll pray for the world, I'll pray for the family, pray for my day ahead, say thanks to God for things. Quite often this happens while I'm marching down to the station, or on the train, or on the tube, but trying to set time aside each morning to pray. And in that time, I'll set aside 5 minutes to listen to God as well. So quite often as Christians, right, it's very easy, it's a one-way channel. God, please this, please that, please the other. But actually to stop and really listen and say, God, is there anything you're saying to me today? Is there anything you want me to do today? Anything you want me to put my time into today? So good to just take that time to listen. A lot of the time, don't really hear much in that time, just a sense of sort of confirmation, affirmation, I'm in the right place, doing the right things. But sometimes get a real clear sense that I should be pushing into something else. So really worth doing that. And then my other thing I do is once a month, I'll do a little review of all of that. So I'll think both at work and home and the things God's calling me to do, and just check in, how am I doing on that? Go back to that thing I wrote down that says what that is, and pray and listen to God and check I'm on track for what he's calling me into. So just a few things, and just to wrap up, some suggestions then, that in this complex passage, looking at all these crazy things we've got to think about in life, all these things to worry about, all these concerns we have, Jesus cuts right through that and says, just focus on me, seek my kingdom. What is it that I'm calling you to do? Go and figure out what I'm calling you to do and do it. And the rest will fall into place. We know it's important, it really matters, they are serious things, but we'll find they will fall into place if we focus on what God's calling us to do and orientate our lives around that. And then just a few simple steps of how we can go away and do that. Seek first his kingdom, seek the light, seek his kingdom, and the rest, all that complex stuff will fall into place around it. And if you've never done that before, if you've never had that opportunity or taken that time to really listen to God and say, what are you calling me to do? What do you want me to do now in this season of my life? I'd really, really encourage you to do that in the next week or so. Take a bit of time to really do that and listen to what God's calling you to do and be obedient and step into that. And the other thing, as Christians, we never do this stuff alone. It's a team sport, right? We're here together, we encourage each other, we support each other, we can bless each other in the ministries we have. So go together with others and be encouraged as well. So I really encourage you, take a bit of time, and we have some prayer time just coming up, so you might want to begin that right now. Take some time to listen to what God's calling you to put your time and energies into now, and seek his kingdom, and we'll find the rest all falls into place around it. Thank you.